The world of mockbusters is truly intriguing. Chief among the studios that specialize in mockbusters, that is, low-budget knockoffs of popular studio titles, is The Asylum, the company behind the Sharknado films. In 2023 alone, The Asylum has released a riff on Cocaine Bear titled Attack of the Meth Gator. The latest installment in its Transformers ripoff franchise, Transmorphers Mech Beasts, and its own animated version of The Little Mermaid, featuring the voices of Steve Guttenberg and E.T. star Dee Wallace.
My mind's made up.
And they say cinema is dead.
Shane Van Dyke, the grandson of acting legend Dick Van Dyke, got a start as a writer on the mockbuster circuit, penning films like Titanic 2, Paranormal Entity, and Transmorphers Fall of Man for The Asylum in the late aughts. Around that same time, he also teamed up with his brother, Kerry Van Dyke, to co-pen the studio's Street Racer, a riff on the Fast and Furious films, specifically Tokyo Drift and The Day the Earth Stopped. Gradually, the pair would move on to writing films for major studios. In 2012, they joined forces with Paranormal Activity director Oren Peli on Chernobyl Diaries.
You have problem?
A critically derided horror thriller that managed to turn a healthy profit despite being condemned for exploiting a real-life tragedy. Some years later, the Van Dyke brothers would pen The Silence, a film based on Tim Lebbon's 2015 horror novel of the same name. Shot in the latter half of 2017, the film would spend an extended period of time gathering dust on the shelf before Netflix acquired it from its original distributor, Global Road Entertainment, and began streaming it in April 2019. By that point, however, a rather similar, critically acclaimed thriller titled A Quiet Place had already made a huge splash at the box office. This did not go unnoticed. A mysterious creature emerges, preying on humanity through sound, enforcing silence under threat of death. Our courageous survivors consist of a family, 2 parents, a younger brother, and an elder sister who is deaf. Having already mastered sign language to communicate with her, they are better equipped than most to navigate the silence. Taking refuge in a farmhouse, they await a significant shift in the situation. Which story was I describing? A Quiet Place? Or The Silence? The answer is both. If you push the context of a narrative to much more general terms, you can make a lot of different stories sound exactly the same. The Silence ultimately tries to heighten the stakes by throwing in a subplot involving a cult whose members react to the vests by cutting their tongues out. Krasinski himself would begin to explore how society breaks down and rebuilds itself in the wake of a global disaster in A Quiet Place Part 2. But his original film focused squarely on a single family surviving in near isolation. Taking all this into consideration, it's no wonder that people think The Silence is a copy of A Quiet Place. However, the reality is that The Silence came first. While The Silence was based on a 2015 novel, A Quiet Place was initially written in January 2016, and filming took place between May and November 2017. Production on The Silence then began in 2017, but given the source material, it's obvious that the concept wasn't stolen. A Quiet Place just came out first. But let's not blame anyone and look into some of the differences as well. A Quiet Place revolves around the Abbott family safeguarding their deaf daughter Reagan from creatures in a mysterious rural setting. What distinguishes this film from others in Hollywood is the authentic portrayal of sign language, as the actress Millicent Simmons is genuinely deaf. Her parents, portrayed by John Krasinski and Emily Blunt, constantly communicate through signing, immersing viewers fully into a world without sound and deepening the emotional resonance with Reagan. In contrast, The Silence features Allie Andrews, portrayed by Kiernan Shipka, who is not deaf in real life. Although Allie's character is deaf, her ability to read lips leads to audible conversations, diluting the genuine tension present in A Quiet Place. The monsters in A Quiet Place resemble a fusion of the Cloverfield monster and the MUTOs from Godzilla, exhibiting swift ground movements akin to rabid hyenas. Clues suggest they might even be extraterrestrial, as hinted by newspaper clippings in the Abbott bunker. Conversely, The Silence introduces vesps, prehistoric bat-like creatures previously trapped in a cave for centuries, now unleashed on the surface to feed and reproduce. Unlike their counterparts in A Quiet Place, these flying monsters are vulnerable to cold weather conditions. While A Quiet Place portrays the Abbotts living in a post-invasion era, The Silence unfolds amidst the invasion onset, showcasing Allie's family fleeing as the United States succumbs to the monsters. A Quiet Place follows a straightforward narrative of survival, with the Abbotts transitioning from prey to predators. In contrast, The Silence introduces the hushed occult kidnapping young girls like Allie for future breeding purposes. This plotline sets the films apart significantly. Now, putting all the rip-offs or the ripped-off-ofs aside, let's look into A Quiet Place 3. With the new trailer out, we're all excited for the upcoming installment, so let's take a rewind on some of the interesting Easter eggs you may have missed out in the last installment, which might finally come to clarity. In A Quiet Place Part 2, there were a few subtle Easter eggs hinting at what might come in the future. The radio transmission. In the film, there's a brief scene where Reagan tunes into a radio frequency and hears a song playing.
It's beyond the sea.
This moment suggests that there might be other survivors out there who have found ways to communicate or are broadcasting signals. It opens up the possibility of exploring other groups of survivors in future films. The island community. Towards the end of the movie, Emmett reveals that there is a community living on an island where the creatures can't reach, due to the water. This hints at the potential for exploring different safe zones and communities in future installments, expanding the world beyond the Abbott family's immediate surroundings. While the sequel culminated with Reagan endeavoring to broadcast a critical feedback to the entire region, setting the stage for A Quiet Place 3 to focus on the ultimate goal of exterminating the monsters, concluding an extraterrestrial invasion represents a departure from the survival-centric narrative of the first Quiet Place film, necessitating a tonal shift for the third installment. We can anticipate a departure from the subdued tension of its predecessors, and with A Quiet Place 3 likely featuring intense action-packed sequences. The Quiet Place series has subtly laid the groundwork for a climatic finale. The first film concluded with the discovery of Reagan's hearing aids as a weapon against the monsters. A Quiet Place Part 2 expanded on this, allowing the Abbotts to share their discovery with fellow survivors and showcasing the family's growing confidence and prowess in combat, with the Abbotts now equipped to confront the monsters head-on. While the prospect of a more action-oriented approach may initially raise concerns, the Quiet Place series has adeptly prepared audiences for this evolution. The transition from silence to cacophony is a natural progression, earned through the series' masterful storytelling and meticulous world-building established in the first two installments. So what are your predictions to where this franchise will lead?